All right. Good afternoon. Good morning. This is Russell Farbiars with our latest episode on Not Minding My Own Business. I am pleased to be joined here today with Ed Marko of Tompkins Bank. Ed is a loan originator with Tompkins. And Ed, why don't you introduce yourself a little to our listeners?
Okay, my name is Ed Marko. I'm from the Berks County area. I live just outside of Reading, Pennsylvania. I've been with Tompkins organization for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I did lending with some larger corporations across the United States. I've got about 35 years of loan experience, so I've been around a little while.
Just a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, the burning question, of course, whenever anyone meets a lender, it is about, well, what would this cost me? So can you talk a little bit about sort of the history of mortgage rates over the last, 15, 20 years?
Yeah. So a common misconception of folks is because we have short memories, I have to remind myself of this fairly regularly. And in this market, I really have to remind myself of this regularly. But from about the 1970s all the way up to the year 2000, the average mortgage 30-year home mortgage interest rate was a little bit north of 8%, usually around, I think it averaged 8.53 to be specific. In the early 80s, interest rates on mortgages for a 30-year fixed rate peaked at almost 19%. And most people forget about that. And rates didn't come below 8% until after 9/11. When 9/11 hit, it damaged the economy. People were reluctant to make buying decisions, and the government started running interest rates down to try and stimulate the economy. And that worked really well, and worked so well that now we seem to be swinging the other way, where rates are probably going to get more towards a normal rate rather than this forced super low interest rates that we saw over the last 5 or 6 years. So, I believe we're in a market where we're going to see things start to go up a little bit, but unless it gets north of 8-9%, we're just getting back to normal, and people need to be aware of that.
Yeah. I think that's, we talked a little before we went on the air about this, that there's this conception that, well, if interest rates are over 3 or 4%, it's dramatic and it's too much. But I think you point out correctly that folks don't always remember the 1980s where rates were really sky high, even in relation to the average. What can someone who might be considering a purchase, what can they do to best take advantage of the environment that we find ourselves in today?
So this is an environment where you don't want to hesitate. I'm not telling you to run out and buy things. I'm just saying you have to look at it as the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. So you have a housing market that tends to, over the last forever years, 100 years of keeping history, house values, with very rare exceptions, continually go up. So if you have values of homes going up and interest rates slowly but surely creeping up, the sooner you can make a move, the better off you are. So if you're going to try to save enough money to have a 20% down payment, and you're going to find yourself chasing a dragon, you're just never going to catch it. The more the house goes up, the more the interest rates go up, the more it's going to cost you, the less money the less your buying power is. So this is an environment where I would encourage folks to look at alternative ways of getting things done. One of the biggest ways is putting less than 20% down and paying MI, or mortgage insurance. I can explain that at length to a buyer if they want to, but basically what MI does is it ensures the bank that even though you don't have 20% down, if something happens, they'll be made whole. It's a small price to pay to get your home, to fulfill your desire of home ownership, and it usually goes away once you get to where you've got equity in the home, where you've got a 20% or greater equity position in the home. The mortgage insurance goes away unless it's an FHA loan. On FHA, it does not. But on conventional mortgages, and that's what most people are going to be looking at, that'll go away. So it's a way to kind of have your cake and eat it.
Sure. So can you tell us a little bit about, the different types of mortgage products that you work with?
Sure. So you've got your government products, which are FHA, VA, products like that. They're specialty products, and they are there's a lot of strings attached to being able to use one of those mortgages. So you want to make sure that you fit that box pretty tight. You usually don't bother with those because right now the products that are out there that are conventional are so superior. So you've got your 15, 20, and 30-year conventional mortgage. That's a mortgage where you're putting anywhere between 5 and whatever percent down, a minimum of 5% down. It's exactly what you think of when you think of a mortgage. There's a fixed interest rate, whatever the rate is, the day that you sign your documentation, that's the rate for the length of the loan. There's no prepayment penalties. You can pay it off at any time, save yourself a ton of interest. You can make extra payments, pay it down quicker. If you looked up mortgage in the dictionary, there'd be a picture of this conventional mortgage. It's what most people think of. Then you have adjustable rate mortgages. Adjustable rate mortgages come in all flavors. You'll hear terms like a 1-3, a 3-5, a 5-7. The first number is talking about the amount of time that the rate is locked. And then the second number is telling you about how when it'll start to go up or down, as the case may be. So if you're in what's typical out there is a 1-3 adjustable rate mortgage. Your interest rate is locked for 1 year, or it's locked once. 3 years from now, it'll start to change. So that's how those work. They're desirable in situations where you want to, let's say you're going to buy a home and you know that 3 years from now you're gonna move, and you want to pay the least amount of interest as you can. So you might take out a 3-1, which would be 3 years locked at a low rate, and then after that, every 1 year it can adjust until the end of the term. So you might take out that mortgage now because the rate is super low on that, and you know you're going to sell the house. Just be aware that if you don't sell the house and rates go up, your payment's going to go up, and it can do that every year thereafter. So it's not a product for everybody. I kind of steer away from those. Another product is a jumbo. Jumbo loans are for people buying exactly what it sounds like, jumbo houses. So if you're buying a really big house and you're financing, I think right now it's $548,000 or more, that would be a jumbo mortgage. And jumbo mortgages have different underwriting guidelines because there's so much at stake. The bank is lending you a lot of money. We have excellent jumbo products, so that makes it a lot easier than most. And probably our best product, though, that we're most known for in the real estate market is our Community One program. We are a community bank, so we care about what's happening around here, and we care about our clients, and we care about the community. So if you're buying a home in our community and you're a first-time home buyer, based on income levels, you'll qualify for as little as 2% down or 98% financing with no mortgage insurance. No MI is required on that program because we don't require it. It's our program. And it's our way to help keep mortgage payments down for people who are first-time home buyers. Well, those are some of the products that are out there that we use most of the time.
What are the requirements for that Community One program? Because that seems like it could be a really great deal for some people.
Right. So let me just see.
Just generally, I don't,
So you need to have a 43% or lower debt to income ratio with your home, and I would talk to you about what that means. You can't, if you live in Berks County, you can't have a household income of greater than $65,760. So that's combined income. That's you, your spouse, what have you. But that's pretty pretty good income level. You've got to have a credit score of 650 or better with no derogatory credit on your credit report. In other words, if you had problems in the past, you want to make sure those are all cleaned up. And if they're not cleaned up, we can help you hopefully get those cleaned up so that we can get you qualified. Or if you've never had credit before, but you've got 3 verifiable bills that you pay every month for at least 12 months. That could be a cell phone, a gas bill, an electric bill, anything like that. We'll look at those as trade lines, and we may be able to get you qualified that way as well. So it's a great program for folks that are first-time home buyers or have limited or no credit.
it does sound like a great program, and it can really help some people, achieve that dream of home ownership. Um, Now, are there people? Well, let me ask this question. You said that you can help people sort of try to qualify. What are some of the things that listeners should focus on to try to clean up their application before they apply? Not just for the Community One program, but just in general.
Yeah, so in general, if you're going to be buying a house, you want to do what we call get mortgage ready. And I actually teach a class on this from time to time. I know you and I have done a couple of them
Right.
over the years, but I do it throughout the year, either with the bank or neighborhood housing services. And it's really boils down to this. You want to reduce your debt as much as possible, credit card debt, personal loan debt, things of that nature that you have a lot of control over. You can control your credit card spending habits. You want to reduce that down to about 10% of what's available. That'll get you the highest credit score that you can get. So if you've got a credit card that, or combined credit cards that you can charge up to $10,000 on, and you have them charged up to $10,000, that's going to have a really negative impact on your credit score. Whereas if you've got that same scenario, you can borrow up to $10,000 and you owe less than $1,000, that's going to give you pretty close to your best credit score. It's also going to reduce the amount of money that you have to pay out regularly on a monthly basis. And by having that amount of money reduced, that gives you additional that you can spend on a house. So you want to reduce your debt as much as possible. You want to take care of as many medical bills, anything out there that you have that's hovering over your head. You want to get rid of that as quickly as possible. Next thing you want to do is make sure that you have all of your documentation together for the last 2, possibly 3 years. I would gather up my income tax returns and have those available. I would have all of my W-2s and K-1s and 1099s, however you report income. You want to have all of that together in one place. So that you can provide that to a lender. And then bank statements. A lot of folks, their whole life is on a cell phone now. So getting documents onto a cell phone can be tricky. What I recommend you do is go to a computer if you can, and learn how to download your bank statement, learn how to download your income tax returns, learn how to download your W-2s and your pay stubs, so that you can provide all that information easy to read to a lender. Lenders are extremely busy and very detail oriented. So if you take a picture of something and it's blurry and you send it to them, they're going to look at that and just kind of, okay, I'll get to that when I can get to it, because it's going to take me 15 minutes to figure out what that actually says. Or they're going to ask you to do it again and do it again and do it again. Whereas if you learn how to download it into a PDF file, write that down if you want, PDF file or a PDF document, you're going to get a crystal clear version of whatever it is that you have there. It's going to be very easy for the loan officer to read. It's going to be very easy for the underwriter to read. It's going to be very easy for the title clerk to read. All the people that are working for you are going to understand that you've made this easy for them. So it's going to go a lot quicker and easier if you know how to do that. Some people just can't get their bank statements because their phone or tablet just doesn't recognize the file as a PDF file for whatever reason. It's probably a software problem on your phone, but rather than fight it, just go to your bank or call someone at your bank that knows you and say, can you email me my last 2 months bank statements in a PDF format? And they're going to say, sure, what's your email address? And then you'll have it and you can forward it on. You want to get the documentation together, make sure it's legible. Understand, you're asking to borrow a lot of money. You want to make it easy. You don't want to go to your parents and have a big fight and then ask them for money. Not that we're your parents, but you want to kind of think of it that way. You want to go in and say, hey, look, I've got my stuff together. Can we do some business? And it'll go easier for you. So they're my two big things. Get your debt squared away. Know how to present your documentation.
Really, you want to be able to present your case for why you should be getting the money that the bank is lending you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the process for applying for a mortgage?
So it's changed a lot over the years. Even 3-4 years ago, I would folks would call me, and then I would either take their credit application over the phone and I would write it all down or type it all in for them, or that we would meet in person and we would sit in front of a computer and I would enter all this data for them or write it down and fax it somewhere. But those days are gone, and they're gone for good. We almost never meet people in person anymore. It's almost all done via the internet, and it's a lot more secure that way. Most banks, ourselves included, use a lending platform, which is an extremely secure website. And I would talk with the client over the phone, find out what their goals are, and then I'm going to send them an email with a link in it. They click on the link, and they fill out an application just like you'd fill out an application for a credit card or a car loan. Name, address, social security number, where you work, how much money you make, how long you've been there, where do you do your banking, how much money do you have in the bank, all those kind of questions just about your finances, so we understand what you can afford. When you're done doing all that, you're going to give us permission to pull credit, and you're going to send that electronically. You don't send it, but you hit finished. And that all goes to me or your lender, whoever it is, electronically, extremely securely. So you're not walking around with all of your personal information on a piece of paper that could blow away. You're not talking to me on a phone that somebody could be listening in on. It's extremely, extremely secure. Once we get that information, we get you pre-qualified for as much as we can. We send you a pre-qualification letter via the internet, and you start looking for a house. While you're doing that, you're probably going to be uploading some documents, your W-2s, your tax returns, your bank statements, all that stuff we talked about a little while ago. Once you find a house, all of this documentation gets pushed into a huge file. At that point, it's much larger. And the mortgage process starts in earnest. You get your full disclosures. You're going to understand exactly what it's going to cost you to the penny. You're going to understand what your payment is to the penny. You're going to understand what your interest rate is to the penny. That's going to get locked in. The home that you're purchasing or refinancing, whichever it is going to get appraised. Once the appraisal comes back, if everything is good and it's approved, you'll get a call from some folks like Russ or Russ's folks to schedule your closing. You're either going to do a virtual closing or an in-person closing, depending on what the environment allows at that time. You sign all of your documentation and you exchange money with the people that you're buying the house from. If it's a purchase, if it's a refi, you just walk away. But at the end of the purchase, you would get your keys and you're a homeowner. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That seems like a pretty good explanation. Now, you mentioned those initial disclosures. You're at closing, the buyer will sign this document called a closing disclosure. Can you explain a little bit what a closing disclosure is?
Sure. So a closing disclosure lets you know uh, what everything is going to cost you. So it'll have the term of the loan on there. So if it's a 30-year mortgage, it'll say 360 months. If it's a 20-year mortgage, it'll say 240 months, et cetera. So you want to look at that and know that that's what you talked about doing. That's what you want to do. The next big piece of information on there is going to be your interest rate. So if somebody told you an interest rate, you want to look at that interest rate, make sure that that's the interest rate that you were expecting it to be. Next, the big thing that most people see is going to be their payment. It's going to show how much their monthly payment is, how much their monthly taxes are. Most people escrow their taxes because nobody wants to write a $5,000 check every September. So they escrow that. It gets paid monthly. Same thing with your homeowner's insurance. That's usually in there. If you're paying mortgage insurance because you have less than 20% down, that'll be there. And they'll all be on top of each other and it'll all add up and you'll see exactly what your total payment is. And that should be pretty close to what everybody was talking to you about. It could be off a couple of pennies here and there, a couple dollars here and there, depending on what your homeowner's insurance changed or how the taxes changed between you and the seller, what have you. But you want to look at that and know that that's what you're going to pay every month, in most cases for 30 years for that home. And then it's going to give you all of your closing costs. Your closing costs are going to be composed of your what you paid for the appraisal, what you paid for title insurance, what you paid for the application fee, what you paid for the flood cert and the tax cert, and all of these fees that are in there. And then the balance of it is going to be your escrows and your down payment. So if you're buying a $300,000 house and you're putting 10% down, then it would be $30,000 plus all those closing costs. Could be $40,000 or more total that you need for closing because your escrows and what have you. That'll all be there explained to you in great detail. So you want to look at all of that, make sure that that is what you anticipated. If you thought you were putting $30,000 down and the real estate agent told you, expect another $10,000 or $12,000 for closing costs and escrows, and it comes to $40,000, you're doing what you thought you were going to be doing. And that number changes from the very beginning when you get your first closing disclosure. Through that process, that might change 2 or 3 times as more information is gathered, your homeowner's insurance, the taxes, etc., until finally you sit down with the attorney and you're signing the documentation, and it's no longer a disclosure; it's your actual, it's your actual mortgage documentation.
Right, and you like you said, you get these numbers as over the course of time that you're going through this process, but you do get what's supposed to be a final closing disclosure 3 business days in advance.
Before, yeah. It starts with an estimate and it ends with the final disclosure.
Right. Now, I want to ask you some other questions. First about Tompkins. What is the origin story of Tompkins? How did they evolve to what they are today?
I think it's about 150 years ago. Some farmers got together in Leesport, Pennsylvania, and they decided they needed a bank. So Leesport Bank was born, and it was in Leesport. We still have one of our bigger branches is still in Leesport. But over the years, we grew until we became 3 or 4 branches throughout Berks County. And then a decade or so ago, we became VIST Bank, and we changed the name to kind of change with the times. And VIST, V-I-S-T, was was an acronym for jeepers. I can't remember what it stood for anymore, what it stands for. But so we continued to evolve and grow branches, and we became Tompkins VIST Bank because we're part of the Tompkins organization. So we now have in Pennsylvania about 20 some odd branches. We have an investment company with Tompkins Investments. We have Tompkins Insurance, which is almost my favorite thing to talk to people about is our insurance folks. They will save anybody. You don't have to be a bank customer. You just need insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance, whatever you need. I was surprised at how much money they saved me. So there's that aspect of it. And because we're part of the Tompkins group now, Most people just refer to us as Tompkins, and you can do business from New York State all the way down to Delaware, and it just makes our footprint a lot bigger. So we evolved from a little bank in Berks County for farmers to a medium-sized bank in Berks County and the surrounding market. And really, at the end of the day, though, we're still just a bunch of Berks County farmers that happen to have a bank.
So does that mean after this, you're going to head out into the field?
Well, it's about time to milk the cows again.
And what's nice about Tompkins is that you still retain your community focus.
Yeah.
How does Tompkins and how do you support the community?
So we're very involved in everything from, like I said, neighborhood housing services in downtown Reading as an organization for folks who are of limited income that are looking for housing and loans and things like that. We're extremely involved in United Way, Salvation Army, various and sundry spiritual organizations throughout the community, all the way up to Schuylkill Haven area, all the way down to Philadelphia and every place in between. We're extremely involved in community business with, for instance, when COVID hit, we were one of the few banks that actually still had in the bank staffing, and we were able to help people out with the PPP loans at a volume that I just cannot comprehend how our folks worked so hard, literally some of them 18 and 20 hours a day to try to keep everybody, above level while we went through that. So it could be something as simple as helping out with Meals on Wheels on a Saturday afternoon, to something as big as working with people 20 hours a day for 3 or 4 weeks to help in a crisis that's extremely large.
And what is your origin story?
My origin story. So I came from a planet where the sun and no, I was raised in Mertztown, Pennsylvania. So I'm real familiar with the Pennsylvania Dutch and Amish community in the area, and most of them are familiar with me. I started in lending almost out of high school. I worked in auto lending while I was getting my formal education. Once that was done, I went to work for a little company called GE. And I worked for GE Capital for about 19 years, doing lending across the country. It was commercial type lending. After GE kind of got out of that business, I kind of tried a couple of things, but I didn't like it. And then I just got back into lending, only this time with mortgages. And I really enjoy seeing people fulfill their dreams and reach their goals. And that's what I like best about it, especially when I see somebody get their first home. It's a feeling you can't explain to people. And then the same thing when you see somebody get that dream home, that's phenomenal too. So there's just almost no downside to doing this for a living as far as I'm concerned. It's a pretty joyous occasion most of the time.
Wonderful. And I know over your career, you've helped so many people achieve that dream. That must be incredibly rewarding.
It is. Thank you.
What would you say your biggest successes are, and what have been your biggest failures?
My biggest successes are my kids. I have 2 beautiful daughters. I have grandchildren now. Both of my kids are extremely happy in their careers. That makes me extremely happy. My oldest daughter followed right in my footprint. She works for a bank in Florida. I'm leaving next week to go visit her again. I visit her a lot more now that she's living in Florida.
So in the winter, right?
Almost exclusively in the winter. Yes. So I think I got really blessed with my kids turning out the way they did, especially having a goof like me for a dad. My biggest failures or struggles, I think, are I think just trying to stay focused, trying to stay positive, particularly the last couple of years. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's been a struggle for a lot of people. We were separated from so many things. There was months where I didn't see my mother, and I'm very close with my mother. So trying to stay positive is something that I struggle with. Not that I get all depressed or negative, because I do work at it. But that's one of the things that I work at the most, is trying to stay positive.
Goal, and it certainly over the last 2 years, it's been sometimes hard to maintain that positive attitude. But you always seem to be positive and happy, so that's it. It's always been a pleasure for me to work with you.
The feeling's mutual, by the way.
Thank you. How do you spend your time when you aren't working?
So I try to. I have two really big things that I enjoy. I enjoy swimming. I just love the water, which is why I go see my kid in Florida in the winter. My wife won't move there because she loves Four Seasons, because she doesn't have to shovel the snow. She just looks at it. So I'm kind of stuck here. But it's a good place to be stuck. I really do like my community, and we have a lovely little home. But I enjoy swimming, outdoors stuff, hiking, things like that. And then my other big passion is music. I play a little bit of music. I'm not a great musician by any stretch of anybody's imagination, but I love going to concerts. There's almost always music on in our home. And when it doesn't matter, it could be anything from going to see a Rammstein concert to the Boston Pops, just about anything in between. I just love music.
Well, we're recording this shortly after the Super Bowl in 2022, so I have to ask you, since you love music so much,
Yeah.
what did you think of the halftime show?
So it's not my favorite genre by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was really well executed. It came off good. Nobody's clothing popped off. There was no gratuitous weirdness there. So I enjoyed it. It doesn't have to be my favorite kind of music for me to go, wow, they really thought that out well. They did a good job of it. I enjoyed it. Again, not my favorite genre, but I enjoyed it. I think it was well done.
I thought it was well done too. There was no Janet Jackson moment, as you alluded to, and for music that is known for curse words, they did a good job of avoiding them.
Yes, they did. For my money, I'll take Tom Petty or Prince back anytime to do another halftime show. I think Prince's halftime show was the best by far in my book.
I agree. I remember that and that. It doesn't get any better than Prince. Of course, if you could get him back to do a halftime show, that would be quite a feat at this point.
Right. Yeah.
We'd have to have a different conversation about your capabilities.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't have that kind of connection.
So Ed, what would you want to be remembered for?
I think when I pass, I would like people to say I liked him, he was nice. Just to be nice. I don't think there's anything better that anybody could ever say about someone other than they were nice, a nice person, for being a decent human.
I think that's fair. So Ed, you're from the area. Someone new moving to the area. Where would you tell them to go grab a bite to eat?
Oh, gee, I would either go to Esposito's, which is an Italian restaurant on the other side of the mountain. It's still Reading, but it's considered Stony Creek Mill. If you want to look it up there's a place called Esposito's there. If you like Italian food, I love that place. I definitely love Stokes Castle. I mean, it's a little pricey, but gee, the service is great and the atmosphere just can't be beat.
You're right. Stokes is a very special place. So, well, Ed, what before we wrap up, I really appreciate you being here and taking the time. What is something about your industry that more people should be aware of?
We put in a lot of hours. Just as an example, I started my day this morning, my work day. I started my day earlier than this, but my work day started about 6:15 with answering emails and getting applications in order so that everything is ready to go. And then I'll end my day. I don't know when. People have questions. People work, all different hours now. So I might have a client that works regular business hours. They can't talk to me until after 5 o'clock at night. I might have another client that works third shift and they want to talk to me at 11 o'clock at night. I'm not available at 11 o'clock at night anymore. But if they were to send me an email and say, look, this is the only time I have, can you talk to me? So we put in some unbelievably long hours during the week. And then, of course, everybody's looking at houses on the weekends. So we're also working a lot of weekends. So we put in a good loan officer, somebody that actually works for the client, puts in a lot of hours, a lot of hours. So be aware when we go to visit our kid in Florida, we're not answering the phone.
Understood, and nor should you. You deserve that time off.
Yeah, but I have backup people, so I'm not a one-man show. So all of my clients will be well taken care of while I'm away.
Oh, I'm sure. Just out of curiosity, how many applications do you process in a given year?
I would say, personally, last year I did a number over 100 loan closings. So to get to 100 plus loan closings, I probably talked to 300 or 400 people. So it can be daunting.
Yeah. That's a good business. Well,
yeah. I've got a great team. We've got a great team. So it's not just a one-man show. It isn't about me. It's about the people that help.
Absolutely.
Folks like you and your team. We can't do this without great attorneys and great title companies and great closers. So.
Well, thank you. So, Ed, if any of our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way is either email emarko@tompkinsfinancial.com. And it's TOMPKINSFANICIAL.com. Or my phone. I've got a really easy to remember phone number. It's 484-388-1000. That is my direct line. I am very busy. I've had 6 phone calls while we're doing this today that I get to return. So most people have to leave a message and I'll call them back. But again, 484-388-1000. That's the best way to get a hold of them.
Well, thank you, Ed, again for being here on Not Minding My Own Business. And we wish you well, and we really appreciate everything you do for our mutual customers and for the community.
Well, thanks for having me, Russ. You have a great day.
You too.